how's it going, everybody? Pragmatic Addict here. I'm really glad to have you here. This is going to be my review of Resurrection starring Rebecca Hall. So, really quickly, this was one of the most cryptic, most mysterious films upon release that I was hearing about. And I've been keeping my eye on this one for a while. I really admire Rebecca Hall as an actress. I think that she picks a lot of very twisty, well-crafted thrillers, things like The Night House, as well as The Gift, which is, one of my absolute favorites. And initially, what this film was kind of giving me vibes of was like the film Watcher that released earlier on this year. But I actually know someone who did catch a viewing of this at Sundance, and, he was saying that this film was something that was very twisted, it's very dark, it's got a lot of twists in it, and it's something that, a lot of audience aren't going to be ready for. So, along with that, as well as, the cryptic kind of promotion this film had, yes, again, I cannot wait to see this movie. I was really anticipating this one. So with all that being said, let's just get right into Resurrection. So the film begins with this girl named Margaret, played by Rebecca Hall, and we see her kind of like counseling one of her coworkers at her job, and this young girl is saying that, she's got some issues with her current boyfriend, or he's got some jokes that he's saying, and she doesn't feel comfortable with them, and he's just saying, well, you're just not into these kind of jokes, you don't get them. And at first I was kind of like, okay, why this kind of intro? Is she a therapist? Which I don't think she is. It's never really displayed what her actual job title is. All I know is that she works in this office and that she is kind of counseling one of her employees. And what I ended up grabbing from this instantly was how well this depicts Rebecca Hall's character, Margaret. What kind of character she is. When she's kind of mentoring this young girl, and this girl's telling, Margaret her issues, she's like, fuck him, he's a piece of shit. Just tell him that and get on with your life. And you go from there to see that she, is this kind of tough as nails woman. She exercises a lot. She does daily things that are definitely oh, okay. All right, you're risky. But what I liked about this is that it sets this character up as this really tough as nails, doesn't take any bullshit woman. And what I really liked about that, with that kind of insight, was, we see that this woman is a victim, at least as far as the trailers go, and that she's really fearing for her life from this, mysterious man. So I was like, how is that all going to, intersect? And that's what I really dug initially. I thought for a setup, this film did really good. But what it comes down to, though, with saying that, is that you feel that this woman has a past, that she's got a history. And going further with the introductions, this is a film that does set things up very instantly in a very kind of crafted manner and very cryptically, just kind of setting up little breadcrumbs that helps you, already start putting things together potentially. For example, within the first few minutes, we meet Margaret's daughter, who just, her literal character introduction, she comes downstairs and she's like, hey, look, Mom, I found this severed fucking tooth when I woke up. It's a fresh tooth. It's got fresh nonsense on it. And I'm just like, okay. All right, hey, proceed. We've already come this far in 5 minutes? But another thing now I want to address, again, with this intro, is this mother and daughter's relationship. It feels very natural. You really do feel like this daughter is, the spawn of this woman. She's very, outspoken, very blunt. She even says things to her mother, as a kind of joke, just to kind of pick at her mother, where you're just like, cool. Again, just up to this point, there was so much to take in that all worked so well that made this movie made me just want to, pick apart this movie piece by piece and really see, and I was anticipating and I was eager to see what all was going to happen here. And as far as their relationship goes, this mother and this daughter, you do get, hints that this is a very overprotective, kind of smothering mother. And again, as far as her introduction goes, what we've seen, even before this in the first couple minutes, this woman, Margaret, does have a past. She is this kind of, well-built, kind of outspoken, again, very, blunt person who doesn't take, any nonsense, it seems. And, just from how cryptic this film was coming and from what the trailer was depicting, you get a sense, again, that there is a story behind her that made her the kind of character she is. And what I'm going to say really quickly is that this film is centered and does depict very well trauma. But where the film actually begins and starts really getting going is that we see, the scene where Margaret is actually in this convention, the one that we see in the trailers, where she spots this man, and we don't know any idea who this man is, this man played by Tim Roth, except that, everything seems to be going all right, and then Margaret notices him, and then has a huge panic attack in this convention, just shuts down. And what I want to say is, this film feels deeply, deeply psychologically haunting. As far as to where I would say, like, Rebecca Hall's performance, only even in this scene, just where, we get a glimpse of, what is really within the roots of this character, and her having these, these attacks, these breakdowns. The way that, her performance for that specific scene, I wouldn't even say shook me, but it put a lot of weight on me. It felt very real, and I got it, and I felt the sense of, the makers behind this movie really got something, to do with this. They understand this kind of side, this kind of mentality, this kind of outlook, and I gotta say, everything up to this point was just getting a lot more heavier and heavier, and again, I was kind of concerned about where this movie was gonna go. But also going into her performance with this kind of, mentality, you see things as far as, even how our daughter reacts to it, and how, again, how the movie just goes from one thing to another so well, with, these kind of, breadcrumbs, this, these kind of, cryptic little pieces here and there, and how, mysterious it does with crafting that, and how ominous and kind of, low-key it makes it, and then just shooting to something like this. It really, within minutes, I was so impressed by just how much it goes into that kind of area where it's it's not about how much you do, but it's about how much you do with so little. And again, even going as far as to how the daughter reacts, initially to her mother's, breakdowns and everything. It was almost I'd almost say that you couldn't even tell it apart, acting wise, compared to someone that, this is genuinely happening to. Again, just how well things are kept, as far as, mystery-wise go, as well as the writing with, this kind of character, what, her story was. It just made this film that much more, exciting to sit through. But I will say this now, though. There are times, I would say that, even early on, that, the film does, the film puts these, things in that could help potentially connect the story, that I think that are not only very, early on, and they're dark, subjects, but they felt very out of place in the sense of, again, not just it being, very early on, but as far as, tonally even, the shifts. This film does a lot of things shift-wise where some of it really works and some of it's very impressive, but for instance, this, it does these things that, again, help kind of, potentially connect the story about what's all going on here, but I feel instead of, actually, as far as, connecting the story in a, cohesive way that could be really, engaging, it's here more for shock value. You're gonna know what I mean if you see this movie, when these things just kind of come and go, or you're just oh, shit, I mean, don't get me wrong, it caught my attention, but, that felt very out of place. But I think that these kind of instances did kind of break the film's streak that it did have going a lot of times. But the film does still, keep the viewer holding their breath, anticipating who this guy is, what this woman's story is, what's all going on here. Also, as things did go on, I did notice that the film was doing a lot more creatively and imaginatively, especially in the sense of trauma. As this woman, starts seeing this man that is potentially stalking her, there'd be times where she's at the store, and then, things will be fine. She'll be shopping with her daughter, and then she'll see him, and then all the surroundings and noise will just kind of drown out. And the best way I can put this is that it's almost in a very dissociative way, which, like I was saying earlier, this feels, like something that could only be crafted by somebody who understands this kind of outlook. And again, it's not just the fact of, the mystery behind the movie and what's all going on, but it's about how hauntingly realistic this feels and how naturally it all feels. Again, doing so much with just so little on the actual surface. Now, going into this mysterious man, played by Tim Roth, I thought Tim Roth did really good in this, performance as this character. Again, So he's not exactly on the surface as far as the character goes for a lot of the movie, but again, it goes back to again that argument with how much you do with something feeling so minor. And that goes into this character's demeanor, his body language, how Tim Roth portrays this mysterious man that could be a potential threat. I thought he was absolutely great for the role, and again, just as a persona, he was very haunting in this movie. And Rebecca Hall as well, for that matter. There's actually this scene, I'd say about like the halfway point of the movie, where it's this like 5-minute or so scene with no cuts where you do start kind of understanding, who this character is and what's possibly going on, to the point where I'd say that like after this moment, you're really just kind of on board with this character and you're just kind of here seeing, the results of things. But I'd say that it's a scene that is probably one of the most strongest out of the movie. I don't think it's, something that, is in the sense of like it lingers with you, but for a 5-minute, one take scene, and for, the subjects that she's addressing, she did really well with that. Now, going a little bit forward from that, like I was saying like a minute ago, where you're kind of like in her shoes now, just seeing things, on the same page as her, is that you're not only like in her shoes now or seeing things at the same pace, but now when you look at things back, in retrospect, it is actually a little bit impressive how, you see again just how well they did things so drastically, so quickly as far as like tonal shifts go, and again how much the film just goes from one thing to another. But going from here, though, I will say that, like, the second half of the movie does go to, some places that should be, more alarming and are more intense, and do feel like, again, the next chapter in its own element. But this second half, regardless of all the, subjects and how things felt on the surface, deeply, they never hit as, strong as the first half of the movie did. Which is, again, because what I really admired about the movie mostly was, the mystery setting around it and how, it did that in a psychological manner. There are so many things that are so cryptic and so unnerving that have, that you want so many different answers to. And within the first half of the movie, that's all, very laid out, in a very craftful way. But how things wrap up toward the halfway point, getting into the second half, you kind of like, it's not that you kind of have all the answers, but like, you're kind of, the film kind of like forces you on a different route where those things aren't necessarily ignored, but they're just kind of like, put on hold. And again, I saw where the film was going, but I guess I just, like, as far as like how strong and how intense and immersive the first half was, this didn't nearly, hit on the same level at all. And it's pretty upsetting because the second half does have every right to go forward again. Like the pacing, the character growth as well. It has every right, and again, the subjects that make it alarming, it has every right to, be that second half. But as far as like shift goes, it kind of made it feel a little bit, just very weak and a little bit left out and just kind of like not, as cared about as the first half. But getting to the last act, I'd say like the last 40 minutes or so, the film does have a very climatic feel, at least, how it's introducing this last act. Everything from Rebecca Hall's not only performance, but also her character development, as well as the score. It really feels like it's going somewhere a lot bigger that we've been really, itching to get to the bottom of. But with this last act, like, as there are things, especially with the characters, where when things kind of, begin to unravel more and kind of like get, we're getting closer to the kind of conclusion, the writing for the characters really just kind of seems to drift, in the sense where, like, I'd go as far as to say it's like with horror movies where you're just screaming at how dumb the characters are, and it's almost frustrating how much, shit someone is getting for something that feels, extremely understandable and extremely, worthy and acceptable enough to make, an issue of. And I guess, like some of what it was going for, obviously, they're trying to take Rebecca Hall's, character in a, certain kind of like fragile kind of like route, especially as far as the audience, seer goes. But I would say that like equally, like the other half of these characters are written in a way just to piss audience off. And I would even go as far as to say that like they're written in a way that you can really only see characters written, for the screen. And lastly, I will say this now. How the film does conclude, how it does wrap up, there is a lot of shock value in it, a lot of shock factor that, I think overpowers anything as far as this ending goes. And I will say, I do think this ending is going to throw more people off in that degree than anything. I don't think it's a bad ending, but it reaches for the fucking stars. Like, I'm not, comparing it to this ending, but like the movie Men, it's one of those things where it's like the movie is very good, and then you kind of get to like the ending results and you're like, ending explained. I was really wanting to walk away from this one saying that it was a highly intense and lingering film, but again, after that first half, I just got less and less engaged. I just think that compared to the first half, it just doesn't really live up to it at all or really level out. This could have done well as just a psychological mystery, but the film, I think, did just get really carried away from that. I'd say overall, I'm going to give this film at least a 4.2 to a 4.3 out of 10, with an overall strong mixed review. But yes, guys, that is going to do it for this review. I'm going to be taking a few days off before getting into next week. I have a lot of videos coming for films such as Bodies, 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 Fall, obviously going forward with the new Beavis and Butthead show. I got a lot of videos down the road for this upcoming week, so I'm going to be taking a couple days off, but I hope you guys liked this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys thought about the video, as well as Resurrection down below for those who saw it. Thank you guys always for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I hope you guys are having a great week and a great day. Take care.